Today I'm going to be solving a new problem from HackerRank called plus minus. Haven't yet read the solution yet, so I'm going to be doing that, or the problem rather, but the first thing I always do is I just start with what is the problem, look at my constraints, and then I'm going to move it into VS Code because I like that interface just a little bit better. Before testing it and running it here. So given an array of integers, calculate the fractions. So the way that I end up doing this, and this is just a peculiar thing for me, but I kind of like having my solutions saved. So I've got a folder on my computer called HackerRank where I put in the different solutions that I've solved. You can see I've already done a few. First thing I do is I create a README file so that I know what I'm doing. And then I will create a JavaScript because that's how I will be solving it. Constraints are that, so move that over. So this is basically just telling me that the length of the array can only be 100. Okay, so then I'm going to create a new JavaScript file, and this will be called plus minus.js. And we'll use that later when we start going into terminal and the console and using that to test our solution. So what is the function called? The function is called plus minus, and it has one function plus minus bar. And the first thing that we're going to want to do is print out ratio of positive. Negatives. Zeros. Okay, so those are the three things that we're going to want to be doing. And the way that we're going to kind of do that, the way that I'm thinking about it is, first we're going to go stepwise through an array. So we're going to need to be able to cycle through an array. And then for each element of the array that we pull back, we're going to want to evaluate whether or not it's positive. If it's positive, return it to a collection of a new collection that will be a positive collection, negative collection if it's negative, and a zero if it's zero. Then to actually get the three ratios that we want at the end, we're just going to take the length of the original array and the length of each of those positive array, negative array, zero array, and that will give us what we're looking for. So first thing that we'll want to do, iterate through the element of the array, taking the ith element. Is it positive, negative, 0? Add the ith element to an appropriate sub array. And actually, rather than that, we can let count positive equals 0, let count negative equals 0, let 0. So the difference here is instead of using a subarray, which takes up more space in memory, we're just going to use a single variable to store that. With this program, probably wouldn't make a difference, but just thinking about little ways that I can make this faster by taking up less memory to the appropriate variable, count variable. And then we'll want to know let array length equal r.length. So ultimately that's going to give us our ratio. And if I recall correctly, the constraint was that we were going to print out positive, then negative, then positive, negative zeros, right? So return positive ratio, return negative ratio, return 0 ratio. So I kind of just walk myself through these steps to make sure that I get things kind of in the right order before I start coding. So I've got a couple of variables that I think I'm going to need, and now I start building my loops. So iterate through each element of the array. So I already know the length. So for I equal to 0, I less than array length. Normally I would calculate that here, but since I'm going to be using this in some math down here, I've already calculated it, I++. And now I'm iterating. So now I want to take the ith element and determine is it positive. So if array, and if statements evaluate what's between the parentheses, and if it's true, then it goes into that. If it's not, then it skips. So array.I is greater than 0. Then I'm going to be counting positive. I'm going to just iterate that. Again, we don't actually want the sum of the values. We want just the ratio of positive. So I'm not adding I to this, because if the value were 1,000,000, then I would go from 0 to 1,000,000, when really all I want is 1 over 1, because we've looked at the first value. Else if Ri is less than 0, count negative plus for the same reasons. And then if it's not positive or negative, it is 0, so we can just count 0 plus. We don't need to determine whether or not it is equal to 0. So going through this, we'll have completing this for loop, we will make sure that kind of everything is in the right place. Actually, this is why things are wrong. So I am off by my indenting because I forgot to start the curly braces. There we go. This is one of the reasons why I like VS Code, because it helps me keep things sorted well. So once we've completed this for loop, we now have 3 values, and I want to console log count positive. I'm lazy, so count negative 0. Now, did it want it to return, or yeah, so it says print. So I'm thinking console log will be the right way to go, but we're going to find out. Okay, so that's kind of how I would go about this, and now let's do a little bit of testing. This is around when I would move back to the actual HackerRank. Scroll down here. So plus minus, this is always where I get the most difficult is when I name my variables something slightly different than their testing scenario, but it looks like I did it right. And now I've got an extra paren. Run my code. Ooh, runtime error. So, yes, VS Code doesn't have a problem with this, but HackerRank likes me to let things be your output. Okay, so what did I do? I counted, but then I forgot to divide by the length, which makes sense. Never actually done math, so I'm assuming this is how it's going to work, but let's give it a shot. Okay, so that looks good. And now let's see if I missed an edge case. Congratulations. And that's how I solved plus minus.